So I was born a couple of years after the Soviet Union collapsed. It was some of the worst years in the history of the country, Georgia. Civil war, corruption, chaos. So nobody had anything, but they still had a source of pride, which was their education, especially for my family. But back then, for the generation of my parents and even my sister, it wasn't so easy to get such a good education. The only way for you to enroll into college was either through a bribe or by coming from an elite type of family. Today, you don't need to come from a certain type of family anymore, but you still need to have money to get a good enough education. When I was studying at the University of Oslo for my thesis, I did a quantitative study and I found out that students from poor neighborhoods in the city had much lower chances of enrolling into university and getting a good scholarship. I travel a lot, even today. I used to travel a lot as a kid. My mother used to take me to archaeological excavations, so I used to live in a new region in Georgia every summer. And I used to meet a lot of locals and children. And I was always amazed at their huge potential, but also their lack of resources and opportunities.
So we all know that the environment where children are raised is critical for their development. But unfortunately, there are still many places on Earth that put people in very unfavorable conditions for living. And before internet, a person's future was determined by the physical environment a person was born in, be it a country or family or school, which is why their interests and passions were limited. I became an education believer, and internet is definitely the fastest and cheapest distribution channel for sharing knowledge with anyone. So I left my corporate job at one of the biggest internet providers, and we decided to found a non-profit, and as volunteers we started to localize and translate educational platforms like Khan Academy and Code.org into Georgian language. And it took us 6 years to make thousands of videos and reading materials available in our native language.
And I just wanted to give special thanks to all of the incredible work that Educare Georgia has been doing over the past 3 years, taking Khan Academy to Georgians. So not only translating and making content, but working with teachers and schools around the country to make sure that every Georgian student has access to a free, world-class education.
Back then, to implement these platforms into the education system, we visited hundreds of schools and found out that the students who need those resources the most cannot afford internet access, which led to the foundation of Give Internet.
Almost 30 years have passed by since my first interaction with computers. The world has changed unimaginably. We have computer systems that manage all aspects of our daily lives. We have refrigerators that can order food when we run out of something. But if you just stop for a second and look around, you realize that there's a lot of people around you who still live in a pre-computer era, especially in the rural areas, who have very limited life opportunities and access to education.
Today we are looking at the internet as a given, but it's not true for the majority of the population. More than 50% of human population has no access to this basic human necessity. And every new technology, invention and progress is based on previous knowledge, and this knowledge can be accessed from the internet.
I'm a stickler for efficiency, and I think that I like to make sure that the resources that I have or the resources that are granted to me by others are being used efficiently and wisely. And I hate the idea that half of the world's population is offline, and we are missing out on huge potential. Providing internet access gives us the biggest return on investment. It is the most cost-efficient way for us to provide opportunities for growth.
Today, with internet connection, for example, one can watch a heart surgery online and discover that she wants to be a doctor. And by the way, we have students like that in our project. Or you can try coding and see if you have passion for this kind of work. That's why we believe that access to internet will help students find their passions and interests.
I was born in 1983 when the Soviet Union was slowly fading out, but we're still living in a bubble. Pretty soon it completely fell down, and it was followed by the Civil War that I remember quite well. My parents took me to a computer class when I was 10. I was fascinated by those devices. A few years later, the internet popped in, and it was a game changer for me. It completely changed my life. Suddenly, I could get access to all kinds of information that I was interested in, and it was not limited to what my teachers or what my parents could tell me. My world became much larger and much more interesting. By the time I finished school, I had quite a bit of knowledge in different areas of computer engineering. I was helping people solve their computer problems. At the end, I became a software developer, but I don't have a computer degree. Everything I learned from the internet.
For me, exposure to the internet was truly life-changing and defined my profession and life path. My first introduction to the internet was in my pre-teen years. It was early 2000s here in Georgia, and internet was considered this new kind of cool thing that not everyone has access to. And I was lucky enough to have my hands on it, and I was instantly blown away with the ability to access the world's whole knowledge from this device in my living room. And I quickly realized that my true passion was in design. Fast forward 10 years, and I was working with the biggest companies in my country, despite the fact that I got no formal education. This was entirely thanks to the internet and self-education.
I remember I wanted to read everything that came into my way, the literature we never had access to before. Today you can read anything. You can take free online courses at the world's leading universities. So slowly I realized that empowering people by bringing them access to knowledge would be something I would want to spend the rest of my career on.